Thank you for the opportunity. I'll keep it brief, Florian. I come from data and analytics. I started it with a small analytics company called Latent View in 2011. That was the early stage of analytics, really data analytics becoming a thing, right? Then we went through a bunch of different hype cycles like big data or Hadoop and so on and so forth. And one of the things, I have always been operating at the intersection of business and technology. And so personally, for me, I'm not an expert at either, but I know enough of both to be useful or dangerous, right? So I enjoyed that journey. Once, as I was getting ready to exit Latent View went public in 2021. One of the things I wanted to do was go from being on the side of analyzing data to the side of creating data, right? And so computer vision particularly, right? A camera acting as a sensor, and in theory, a camera being able to literally convert all of the video stream into analyzable data was, as a concept, was very, very powerful, because if you can convert all camera streams into useful data, there is a lot of rich information there, right? So that was sort of my primary interest in vision, to go from a consumption of data to a creation of data side. And then on the other side, the sheer amount of video and the power of video, if you can get it right, is huge, right? So we started in 2019, actually. There's three of us, three co-founders, right? Very different backgrounds. One of us is from private equity, so had seen businesses and data and comes from that angle of, this is the future. I come from more business and technology side. And the third guy is a serial entrepreneur. We started in 2019. First year or so, we didn't really know what we were doing. Just kind of trying to figure out what was going to happen, right? Interestingly, COVID was a bit of a blessing, if I may, for us. We got our first break in COVID with retail, because retailers suddenly needed to know occupancy, social distancing, and all of that became, how do you figure that out? And we were in some ways forced into a model that we now use and became a model of choice, which was operating on-prem, because these retail and operating remotely, right? So the retailers needed to know how many people are in there, are they social distancing, are they wearing masks, and so on and so forth, and they needed to do this on-prem, and they needed us to do it remotely. So that was when we actually cut our teeth on the foundation of the technology, which is, can we do computer vision at scale on-prem, right? As COVID waned, it was very clear to us that retail is not the space which is going to be our growth engine. And so we pivoted to move a lot more towards distribution and manufacturing. As I speak, we have 40 odd clients, so 40 clients across North America, Middle East, and India. 70% of the business is in manufacturing and distribution, right? And our software is deployed in 800 separate physical locations. So what that means is there are counter distribution center as one location. There are 800 physical locations that we are deployed in, right? That's hopefully that gives you a bit of a background. We are about 60 odd people right now, most of us in tech, right? Looking to expand. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah, congratulations on this journey. And I think it's so interesting too, so often in the startup journey, how some of the external factors steer us in a direction of better product market fit. Because
absolutely.
And versus founders, which also happens a lot, that are just sort of stuck on a product market fit, and then they won't make it, essentially, right? So it's so great. I'm glad to hear that this worked out. Give me a little bit more specific now, on the capabilities and the use case size when we look into manufacturing centers, distribution centers, and so forth. You already mentioned the retail use case earlier, but how does this now look like specifically in those more the supply chain side of things?
Yeah. So very broadly, our manufacturing and distribution use cases fall into three categories: productivity, quality, and safety, right? There is a bit of a market characteristic to each of them. In the US, we largely do productivity and quality for our customers. In India, though, there is a lot more safety. So safety meaning personnel safety, right? PPE, masks, vests, and so on. Now, maybe it'll help if I add a couple of examples of the kind of stuff we do, right? So if you think of a DC, of a distribution center, there a very common thing we do for a lot of our clients is they have when they ship product to their customers, and these are B2B shipments usually, there is typically a 1 to 3% dispute rate, which is incomplete shipment, wrong product, wrong pallet, damaged, so on and so forth, right? I mean, and 1 to 3% dispute rate basically means you don't get paid for them or don't get paid for them for a long time. And the cycle to resolve them is often 120 days or longer and involves a whole lot of manual activity, right? Which is some of our clients actually have someone walk into a warehouse and literally just look for a particular barcode in the warehouse. I mean, imagine the amount of hours that wastes. So what we do with them is using a combination of existing and then added new cameras. Again, we are a software, so we are not selling the camera. You're buying the camera. We tell you where you place the camera. We create live records of truckloads. So as you're loading a truck, we use the software on the camera to create a live record, have an ERP integration to validate if what you're doing is right. So that's the quality aspect of it, right? Which is, am I doing it right? If you do it wrong, there is a real-time alert. If you do it right, there is a digital record of the entire thing. So in case there is a dispute, the time to resolution is close to zero, right? That's a very common problem we see with multiple clients, right? And it takes away a lot of manual activity, improves quality. The productivity side of that is now once you have the cameras monitoring the dock for this, I can also use the same data for the timestamps to figure out how long does it take me to move pallets, right? Are there specific places pallets are stuck at? Are there flow issues both on inbound and outbound, right? How long does it take me to load or unload a truck? So for example, some of our clients meet 75% of the time they meet their labor standard, which means 25% of the time it's taking them longer than what they think it should to unload a truck. I mean, why is that? I don't even know today, right? But with the camera sensing that, there is a lot more granular data being created to figure out what might the disruption be, what might be the root cause for delays and loss of productivity.
So no, I appreciate that. Very specific, I think, application and clear. I mean, ROI essentially that
Yeah.
you're getting back on that. So this is specifically to a distribution center, to trucks coming in and out, right? But
Yeah.
it sounds like since you mentioned productivity, quality, safety, so you got a couple more different use cases, I assume. And I'm also curious,
Yeah.
as you talk about, maybe if you want to share a few more, some of on the back end, some of the capabilities that on the software side, AI side, right? Like that you're leveraging to make all of these kind of different use cases work.
This is yeah. So it's a great question. So the way we kind of think of this, Florian, is I wouldn't call we are not a product. So think of us as a computer vision platform. And the reason I say this, right, our thesis in the space, right, is there aren't already, but there are going to be general purpose vision models, and we are already moving towards towards that future. So what that means is the way we think of ourselves is, can I have the best vision models, particularly as it relates to manufacturing and distribution, which means I have the best vision model to detect a forklift. I have the best vision model to detect a human being. I have the best vision model to detect a pallet, an empty pallet, an open pallet, a box, and so on and so forth, right? And our base layer, the foundation layer, which is the platform, has these models which are trained on real world data. So we're not talking about synthetic data, we're not talking about theoretical models, we're talking about the advantage of having 800 separate sites is I see pallets in hundreds of them. So I know what pallets look like in different lighting conditions. What do they look like in different industries, right? What do they look like loaded with brown boxes? What do they look like loaded with neon colored boxes? And all of this matters, by the way. I mean, because the models are only as good as the data they are getting, right? So the advantage of having all of these implementations is we're getting all this data. So the intention is to create that foundation layer where we can recognize that particular object always, everywhere, right? Once I'm able to recognize the object, right? And if I have, and again, we don't do this in all instances today, but if I have enough compute, then I'm not going to run only one model on a camera. I'm going to run a general purpose vision model on each camera, right? So my camera is truly a sensor of everything. It can see this is a street, this is a forklift, this is a yellow sign, this is a stop sign, this is a human being, and their respective movements. Everything on top of that is just in some ways a UI, right? Because what I do with that data is entirely, I can build a new use case. So even as we speak, we think of this as the platform, the computer vision platform. And then every single use case on top of is just an extra UI. And that UI doesn't take us long to build. I mean, we've done, if we have the foundation model ready, right? It takes us no more than 2 to 3 weeks to stand up a new use case, completely new use case, right? So that's why you will hear me talk about different types of use cases which may not sound related, right? But at a computer vision, fundamental computer vision model level, a human being who is driving a forklift is not different from a human being who's not wearing a mask. It's the same vision model, right? Does that make sense in terms of how we think about these platforms?
Absolutely. No, it's super interesting, and I feel like it touches on a very core challenge. And I'm curious if you feel like you're experiencing this too, or how you go about doing it. That technologies is evolving very quickly, and technology is enabling new capabilities, new use cases, and you on the technology side, you're kind of saying, look, I'm a platform. I can do any kind of use case, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I have a practitioner who has to say, don't implement technology because it's a shiny new object. They have to lead with a business case and so forth. But if they don't understand what technology like a vision platform like yours is capable of doing, they would never come up with the right use case to even think about it, right? Like to get the right idea. So it's how do you experience this sort of interesting matchmaking that needs to happen when you're a broad platform with broad application? It's almost like, hey, here's some examples. Like, what is it that you guys do? Number one, is that the approach? And number two, I feel like that makes the sales and marketing a little more tricky because, it's so much easier to just say like, hey, we fixed this issue for you, right?
Yeah. So, no, very interesting question. And so I'll talk you through the journey, Florian, in terms of how we have gotten to where we are today and how we are doing what we are doing today versus what we were doing 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, particularly when we started our North America operation, right, we were exactly where you said, right? I mean, I have this platform, it can do a lot of things. I don't even know what it should do for you, right? So what we did, our primary go-to-market was through an advisory board. We set up an advisory board of, and you can see them on our website. Most of them are practitioners from either, Tony introduced us. Tony's himself supply chain practitioner. He's on the advisory board, and there are other people like him. And the whole intention was we don't want to go. I mean, A, I don't want to presume what your problem is. B, for you to benefit from a platform that is general purpose, it doesn't make sense to just right away just talk about one thing, right? So what we did for the first year and a half was I would do a 2 to 3 day site visit. That was free of cost for our prospects. Of course, I would need their time and they would walk me through, the agenda is not to figure out what we can do for them. Just tell me about your operation. Tell me what bothers you. You know enough that you know that this is a vision platform. So are there things you wish you could see that you're not able to see today, right? Or things that come to light later that could be seen, if seen in time, would be useful. So the first year or so, we did a lot of that, about I think 40 odd site visits. Every site visit is 2 days. At the end of 2 days, we sort of workshop it out for about 3 to 4 hours and say, here are 25 problems we identified. Let's put them on two axes. The value, right, which is how quickly can I, what's the monetary value that I can get out of it, and how quickly can I get to it, right? And then figure out the one or two that really matter and just attack those. And then we will go to the remaining 25. The good news is once you've cracked the first one, we can crack the second, third, fourth, fifth too using the same cameras because that's the power of the platform, right? So in fact, this retail deduction problem I talked about earlier actually came out of one of those visits. So what we are doing slowly now is, as we have learned more about what the common problems are and what the low-hanging fruit is, we are pivoting our GTM to go to clients where I go say, hey, I'm not going to worry about, we're not going to do a 3 day site visit and talk about all the problems in the world. Do you have this problem? If you do, I'm going to put a camera here, solve this problem. Then we will talk about other problems too, right? Because the ROI case for some of this is very clear. So in distribution, that's the ROI case that I know I think is our tip of the spear, if you will, right now. So our GTM is already changing in that when I talk to a distribution leader today, I'm not going to spend 3 days understanding your operation. I'm just going to ask you, what is your reduction rate? Right? Couple more questions, and then we know whether we should be talking further or not. Does that make sense? Does that help in terms of where we
Oh
are?
yeah, absolutely. No, this is, and I'm glad you arrived at that. Otherwise, I think it would be a very
Oh, it would be
complicated.
very, very. I don't think we've yet fully arrived at it. There are a couple others, but that's the intention, right? Identify 3 to 4 lead in use cases, if you will, right? Tip of the spear kind of use cases, right? But I will say this, right? That said, we don't want to become that just one pinpoint company. And then there is a reason for that, Florian. If I fast forward 10 years from now, right? I mean, everybody already has cameras. 10 years from now, they will have more cameras. Imagine you are an enterprise, right? A Fortune 500 enterprise. You have hundreds of thousands of cameras. You have a manufacturing process. You have distribution centers. And cameras can be used as sensors to create data and improve productivity. You would not want 500 different vendors doing pinpoint solutions on all different cameras. That would not make sense to you, right? You would want one partner who can take your entire camera network, convert them into a sensor, and solve multiple problems for you. So in some senses, that's the 10-year opportunity that we want to be present for, rather than get too hyper focused on only one problem, which then gets you thrown out the moment someone more general purpose can come around.
And somebody wants to work with you guys, right? Like they're curious, right? They're a prospect. There is generally this set of questions, especially for hardware. In your case, hey, we have cameras, we don't have cameras, right? From the software side, what kind of data do you need from me? My data is all over the place. It's not organized. It's not clean. Do you need to integrate to some of my systems? My IT team doesn't have time for this, right? So there's generally sort of a set of questions to get started. How do you approach them?
Yeah. So I think the first question on hardware, typically you have cameras. Even if you have cameras, the good and bad thing with CCTV cameras is they are sort of forgotten, right? No one knows where they are, who uses them. The good news, however, is they are very easily integratable. We are compatible with 99.5% of them. However, that said, before we go to cameras, I'll go back to again, what problem are we trying to solve? Because if I don't know what problem you're trying to solve, all of your cameras are useless to me, right? They may be in the wrong place, right? Once we have identified, so let's take an example of, stick to the same example of, you have the shipment problem. You lose 2% of your revenue, or your 2% of your volume gets disputed every year, right? How do we go from there? So the first question then is, we have a bunch of process related questions in terms of, do you have barcodes on pallets? What size are those barcodes, right? Once we get a sense of what that looks like, we will recommend what and how many cameras you need to buy. Typically, our customers buy the cameras themselves because these are off-the-shelf cameras. There is no reason to buy from us. I mean, Honeywell or Hanwha can sell them to you. Fortune companies have much better negotiating power than we do, right? But we will tell our customers which ones should you buy. These cameras are not the core of the value proposition, Florian, is making a standard camera smart. So these cameras can be anywhere from a $50 camera to a $1,000 camera, right? So the capex on the cameras is not going to be, it's not going to hit you, right? The second thing, really a big thing, is there is a whole big IT review that happens, IT security review, because companies are still trying to figure out, even for all of these guys still, if I'm going to send you a piece of hardware, which is not the camera, but the GPU, the on-prem GPU we send, that typically is all of the IT security team shows up and they ask us a bunch of architecture questions. There is initial skepticism around it. The good news is we work with 40 clients. Many of them are Fortune 500. So there is a proven architecture model, right, in terms of security. Just so you know, for example, one of the key things is we don't take video out. The reason to send the on-prem device is all processing happens on-prem. All that gets taken out is metadata, and that metadata can even be sent directly to a client's cloud. It doesn't have to come to our cloud, right? So there is a bit of back and forth on the IT security side. We don't need any data from our clients because we are creating the data from the camera, right? The whole value proposition is, this is data you don't have. Like, that 25% of your trucks in this month took more than 3 hours to unload, but you know nothing else. You don't know why. You don't know, was it because after unloading 20 pallets there was a disruption for an hour, or was it just slow? Was there one guy working there instead of two? You just don't know any of it, right? So we don't need any of your data. We're going to create the data anyway, so that's not a concern. Integrations is something we recommend ourselves for two reasons. A vision model that is expected to perform in the wild with no context is going to be far less accurate than a vision model that has an integration and knows what it is looking for, right? So if I know which pallets are going to go on this truck, and I have that universe of 25 to read from, my read is going to be much more accurate than if I just have to read in the wild. That's one. The second, more important reason from a client standpoint is integration makes it actionable and integrated into the business process. If I have an ERP connection and I know which pallet is supposed to go on there and I see the wrong pallet going on there, I can give you a red flag and say, hey, you're doing it wrong. Without the integration, I cannot do that, right? But typically we don't get to integration on day one. We get to integration after doing the, proving the concept, doing the POC, getting the pilot done. Once you're convinced the basic tech works, then we do the integration. Typically the integration is light. It's not that we are not looking for big effort from your IT team. All we are looking for is some kind of an API access so we can, take the data in or send the data back there, right? Depending on what we are trying to do, the whole cycle can be anywhere between a month to a couple of years, right? Because there's a lot of variability on depending on the organization you're trying to work with and how operationally integrated the use case is. There is sometimes installing cameras, getting network access can itself take months and months, right? You can take 4 months to just get network access. And then depending on the type of use case you're solving and how many human beings are involved in that process, change management is a whole, it's a beast in itself. You deploy the software, then you keep iteratively learning and training, and it might take 6 months for you to stabilize. So that's sort of general, but I'm happy to get into more detail.
No, this is helpful. This makes a lot of sense. You took away some of my questions when it comes to light integration, deeper integration. When it comes to you just touched on change management, just to double click into this a little bit, because I imagine you tell me. So you have a use case, you set up a system, and then it's like an alert-based system, right? So if that's the case, I don't even necessarily need to log into your system, right? Like I may just get an alert, a text on my phone or something, and I take action. But I'm sure there's, of course, a portal that tracks everything. So how much of the sort of, when we talk change management and out of sort of the getting the value out of vision systems and information that you provide, then automatically, like it sounds like I can get value quickly without any integration, but then it sounds like if I can go deeper into an ERP integration or WMS or MMS kind of, do I still then work just within that ERP, or do I then end up working more in your portal as well, right? Like as I integrate deeper.
In an ideal world, our portal does not need to exist. So that's why we want to do integrations, right? So that as a client, your life should not change. You should not have to get used to a new portal, right? So think of it, this is the ideal scenario. The scenario is almost never ideal. At an operator level, you want zero interface. All you want is a green, red interface, right? I mean, you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong, right? Or rather, you're just doing it wrong when you're doing it wrong. Otherwise, don't bother. So the operators typically have zero interface. They just have a visual light or some sort of, like you said, a text, right? It's the management layer that needs some sort of an interface. In the initial 5 to 6 months, we start with an interface that we own, because integrating that into ERP and MMS, it's not, it takes time, right? But gradually, if conditions allow, we want the data to get piped into your ERP or into your database, and it to become part of your regular, MIS reporting, management reporting, or whatever it is, instead of you using our interface, right? Now, like I said, it doesn't always work out quite like that, because oftentimes for clients, if I again go back to this use case of retail deduction and whether you shipped right or shipped wrong, right? The cycle of integrating it into ERP and searching it in your system can take you a couple of years. I can quickly give you a UI, and whoever is trying to solve that problem can just say, hey, this barcode, where did it go? Show me a video. And we can, our dashboarding capability is much more nimble. It's much more intuitive because it's much newer compared to ERP, Power BI, which might take you whatever number of years. So in an ideal world, I would not want us to have an interface at all, but we do end up having an interface sometimes.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so I'm curious, I think you touched on this earlier a little bit, when it comes to your vision model that keeps learning, keeps recognizing objects, and then you're rolling this out across dozens of locations within my company. You roll it also across 800 locations across the world, right? Is there sort of a meta level of information that you start to learn from across different locations in terms of processes, practices, best practices, and so forth, where number one, you get to see that because you have insights into everybody, right? But then number two, it allows you guys maybe to go back into the client and say, hey, there's some opportunity to do something better, differently, and so forth. Like, how does that work?
So there are two levels to that, Florian. One is purely the computer vision model level, right? Which is by being in 800 locations, I have a model deployed in 800 locations that is recognizing a particular object in 800 locations. It's failing in 800 locations. So I have failure data to give back to the model and say, you were wrong here, you were wrong here, right? That feedback loop already exists. So a lot of our models, particularly, let's say a forklift or a pallet, the very standard objects that you see in a warehouse are quite robust and are getting robust every day and they are learning every day. But that's not a layer that gets exposed to a client, right? I mean, because that's the foundation. The second layer, which you're talking about, which is the more, how is your, how does your cycle time for loading a truck differ from the industry? That is where we want to get to. We don't have enough data yet because I can't really. I mean, 3 months of data is not enough data to be able to conclude. But what we want to be able to do, and we are doing this in some limited instances already where we have enough data, is I can even, forget even across clients. It's even within a client across locations, right? I have 5 DCs. How do they compare? That kind of stuff within a client we are already doing. That you are able to compare two DCs with each other. You're able to compare two physical locations with each other, right? And I think in about a couple of years we'll be able to do cross-client comparison. There is a world where I can see you could be publishing a benchmark report, for example, right? That's the goal. That's where we want to get to.
But one topic I wanted to ask you to kick things off here is, as we all get more comfortable with interacting with AI and seeing the potential, seeing the productivity enhancements, right? That's still on my computer within my TMS, my MMS, my data, my systems, right? But you are essentially going out there, you're creating new data, you're getting into the physical world. And when we think about that, supply chain is, at the end of the day, about moving physical stuff, right? So we're talking about different locations around the world, things being made, things being interacted with. There's automation, robotics, all of that, right? And that's not, at this point, that's not really included yet in all of our AI opportunities, right? So how do you see, as somebody who's sitting at this intersection, where is that world of AI going as we integrate the physical world into this AI environment that we're all starting to get more comfortable with?
So I would say, even though it might sound like it's not included, we definitely benefit from a halo effect. Getting a conversation with a prospect because you're doing AI is easier, right? I also do think that for AI to have medium to long-term impact, you got to go beyond everything generative AI can do. There has to be, as digital as even an Amazon is primarily a physical operation. You just don't see the physical operation, right? So I think I do see that the real meaningful impact is going to be made in the physical world. The good news is I mean, we touch wood, we've been lucky maybe, but we have had decent traction, right? I can, however, see why there is more interest right now around generative AI and why what we do is a little harder, because the moment digital and physical start interacting, execution is so much more difficult than just execution only in the digital world, right? But I think I don't see a world where AI can do with just being in the digital realm and will not be in the physical, right? We in fact already see some of our clients experimenting with some level of robots. Are these transformational? No. But I also, on the other hand, I'll also say I don't expect transformation to happen overnight. I think this was one of your roundtables. We were talking about people were talking about dark warehouses, and then someone said the entire infrastructure that exists today does need to be utilized. You can't make them, you can't build everything anew, right? So there is a lot of opportunity there, but I think we have to think about that opportunity as incremental. Like there are going to be small gaps you will need to identify in processes and improve. And AI has a lot of applications there, which is something no one talks about, but I see on the ground is actually already happening and will continue to happen more and more.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, it's you mentioned earlier it's kind of all about managing expectations, right? That's you mentioned that's sort of your the main job is on the one I'd say even if we think about the last maybe year, 2 years, right? There was like we started with the hype, then suddenly there was a lot of caution and like hold on one second, but now we're still back into yes,
Definitely.
like and a lot of it is really top down to say, hey, everybody's doing AI. We need to do AI without even knowing in what sense, in what application, in what way, which kind of AI, right? Like it's just like it's the buzzword, and that's kind of the
Or
way,
how well it works, right? Or how well it works, right? As
or
in
how well it
the
works.
expectation that I will plug it in and it will work versus the fact that, hey, if I have a vision model that has never seen a particular part, it has never seen that particular part. It needs data, right? Uh, and or the many ways it can fail. I mean, I just keeping it restricted to a camera, right? Our vision models can only detect what they can see. So if you're doing something, I mean, I've had clients say, oh, that guy's not wearing a mask, and I didn't get an alert. Well, but can you tell he's not wearing a mask because he has his back towards you? So it's there is a lot of, I think, a lot of people truly think AI is actually at the level of AGI, and it can truly think and process like a human being can, and it cannot, right? So there's a whole lot of that. That's the expectation management, the education, and the fact that you have to do incrementally. And hey, but think about it this way. Sure, it can't tell if that guy's wearing a mask, right? But before you could look at these cameras through a software, you could tell nothing. Aren't you better off than where you were like 2 months ago? So we have to think about that in step by step. And there is a lot of that. There's just a lot of that. I think part of the while on the one side there is the halo effect of AI, and people are interested in talking to you, on the other side they also have unrealistic expectations. A lot of people think there is a silver bullet that's going to fix all my operations, which is not really true. I will say though, the more mature organizations we work with, I think have figured it out already, and they take a very fail fast, experiment, move quickly approach compared to think of this as this can solve all the problems.
Yeah, and considering now that everybody is experimenting, right? And is there are lots and lots of very interesting applications for AI technologies in supply chain. I talk to probably 6 companies every week, and I'm learning new stuff all the time. Even broader than just vision or warehouses, like just general Gen AI applications across all the systems. What's your perspective when it comes to a supply chain leader who's excited about the stuff, right? And wants to be innovative, wants to take advantage of as many of these opportunities as they can. But what's the risk of ending up with, 20 different solutions? Are they all going to be like sort of standalone? And am I back in the siloed way of thinking and working because now I've implemented 30 different AI tools in all of my different operations? Like integration of all these tools, are they going to be able to talk to each other? I know this is more of a philosophical question that will go outside of your vision tools, but is there anything, like as you speak to lots of clients, is there anything that concerns them there, and do they have figured out a strategy around that?
I don't think we've reached that stage, Florian, where you're concerned about having 30 tools. I think a lot of the folks I talk to would be very happy if they had 30 tools that actually had ROI, that did not talk to each other. Because making them talk to each other or finding something that will make them talk to each other is not such a big ask if I have 30 things that work and provide me ROI, right? And I would say thinking, I mean, again, I go back to, you can't think of this as I will find one tool that will solve all my problems, will also be interconnected. I think we will go through that journey. We will have tools, we will have multiple tools. We then will figure out, oh, maybe they're a little siloed, we will connect them again. That's fine. As long as the tools you have deployed have a real business case. The concern I am seeing right now is I have 10 experiments. How many of them are actually even working? Like, are they giving the, first of all, about a year or two ago, there was even a question of, did I even do enough due diligence to figure out if there is an ROI attached, or am I just doing an AI project? Now, I think we are in a better place because there is more diligence and more of a business case. But particularly on the physical side, I'll come to, because I work only on the physical, interaction of the physical side, is okay, I have 10 experiments. How many of them are actually showing me the ROI I thought they will show me, right? And the answer is probably two or three right now if I'm doing well. So I think we are a little further away from having 20 things that are working but not talking to each other. And I would say some of my prospects would kill to be in that situation where they have 20 things that work, but the only problem is they don't talk to each other.
Got it. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah.
So one other question back to your sort of core expertise of vision systems, computer vision, and so forth. Paint us a picture of sort of the long-term opportunities that you see in that this particular space of vision systems can sort of deliver some what's the futuristic outlook here? What can we expect down the road?
So a futuristic outlook is, in my mind, a futuristic outlook is, imagine a DC with multiple cameras, and these are not CCTVs, all kinds of camera sources. In an unrestricted world, that can be camera sources like even mobile phones, robots, whatever, right? And think of each camera as a sensor. Did I lose you, Florian? No, you're there. Okay. Each camera is a sensor that is sensing a number of things the entire time. And there is a deep integration with an actionable system somewhere, right? So there is a network of interconnected systems, right? Which are connected through these camera sensor data, right? So you can dynamically, for example, make decisions on change of flow, dynamically make decisions for, let's say, allocation of docks, right? Dynamically make decisions for what needs to go where, who needs to be assigned where, and be able to act on that in real time, right? We are still far away from that, right? But you think of this as there is a world where, and this won't be just computer vision, it would be even other sensors, but you are able to use all this data, sensor data in real time, where you're not planning a year ahead, you're not planning a month ahead, you're potentially planning the next 20 minutes, and that you can do the plan, redo the plan every 10-15 minutes if needed. And again, this is futuristic. We'll see when it'll take some time to get there, right? But you can take out a lot of sporadic, episodic inefficiency that exists in physical operations if you can get to that world, right? It will take more than vision. It will take vision, it'll take a lot of other sensors, and then it'll take a whole lot of other compute and platform capabilities to be able to process and action that. But that's, I think, where we could see the future headed.
Yeah, super interesting. We're coming up to the end of our session here. Anything that I haven't asked you yet about Assert AI or any other last thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up?
I just say, I think you did ask it, but if I were to sort of go back and reiterate a couple of things, I think in my mind, impact is king, right? I mean, any of us, our technologies or businesses exist to make an impact. So we got to figure out the ROI case, one. And two, AI or not AI, execution is still super, super important, right? So AI cannot replace execution. You still need to spend the time figuring out how to implement and execute. And if you kind of keep those two things in mind, with time, I think there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of good things.